Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're doing something absolutely fascinating. We are going to break down the world-famous Rio de Janeiro accent. You know, the Carioca accent. But we aren't going to look at this as just some abstract linguistic concept or like a boring list of vocabulary words. Oh no. We're actually going to treat this as a series of tangible physical mechanics. We're going to look at what your mouth, your tongue, and your throat are literally doing.
To start us off, I want to pose a quick question to you. Why is it that a native American English speaker, even one who knows Portuguese grammar perfectly, usually ends up sounding, well, kind of like a robot when they try to speak like a Carioca? It's pretty funny, but the issue actually isn't their vocabulary at all. It's a physical battle. Your mouth is actively fighting against your ingrained American English muscle memory, which demands completely different movements than the ones they use down in Rio.
Okay, let's dive into this and look at the exact roadmap we'll use to rebuild your mouth mechanics. We'll hit the American pronunciation barrier, palatalization of T and D, the famous Carioca hiss, the throat R mechanics, some physical training in the mouth gym, and finally, the social switch. Let's get right into it.
Starting off with Section 1, the American pronunciation barrier.
Here's the deal. American English heavily relies on moving your jaw forward and really drawing out those vowels. And that completely blocks the natural rhythm you need for Rio. We call this the muscle memory barrier. It's basically the ingrained physical habit that causes your mouth to instinctively reject Carioca phonetics. To speak Carioca naturally, you really have to treat this explainer like a literal gym session and physically retrain your mouth, your tongue, and your throat to perform movements they have quite literally never done before.
Moving right along to Section 2, palatalization of the T and D sounds.
So, in American English, we produce T and D sounds with a very clean, dry little tap of the tongue. But in Rio, there's a mandatory rule called palatalization. Whenever a T or D is followed by an I or an E, they completely transform. The T turns into a ch sound, kind of like in the English word cheese, and the D turns into a J sound, like in jump. I want you to physically try it right now with me. Press your whole tongue firmly against the back of your top teeth and force the air out. You see, the Carioca sound requires intense air pressure and friction. It's this forceful block and sudden release of air.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the stark contrast. On the left, an American naturally wants to say tia or dia super cleanly. But on the right, you see the actual Carioca reality, chia and gia. So the Portuguese word for milk, leite, becomes leite. But hey, massive warning here. You must never ever force this ch or ja sound before the vowels a, o, or u. The word tato stays clean. If you say chachu, you'll instantly give yourself away as a foreigner.
All right, Section 3, the famous Carioca hiss. If you've ever heard someone from Rio speak, this shift is almost always the very first thing you notice. There is a total golden rule here, na dúvida chiado forte, which translates to, when in doubt, use a strong hiss. Whenever the letter S appears at the end of a syllable or at the absolute end of a word, it transforms into a strong fricative hiss. It ends up sounding a lot like a heavy English SH or even a buzzing J.
Let's look at exactly where to place this. At the end of a syllable, the word mesmo turns into mesmo. Super iconic, right? But, and I need to heavily stress the danger here, do not overuse this technique. You must never hiss the S when it sits directly between two vowels. The word for house, casa, has to sound like casa with a Z sound. If you say gasha, you really don't sound Carioca, you just sound like a caricature.
Next up, Section 4, the throat R mechanics.
Okay, consider this your ultimate boss battle. To win this one, you have to abandon your curled American tongue entirely. In English, our R is retroflex. We curl our tongues way back, like when we say car or water. Well, the Carioca R is the exact opposite. It requires absolutely zero tongue movement. All of the friction happens entirely in your pharynx. Seriously, right now, I want you to drop your tongue completely dead in the bottom of your mouth and try to gargle without water. Try it. That precise muscle contraction in the back of your throat. That is the exact mechanic required for the Carioca R.
And this brilliantly illustrates how the sound changes based on its position. If the R is at the end of a syllable, like mar or porta, it honestly sounds exactly like the English letter H in house. Mar becomes this nice raspy mah. But if the R is at the beginning of a word, like rato, or doubled like carro, it becomes a much stronger, heavier throat hit. It's a strong, blown H from deep down, making carros sound almost like cajo. And remember, keep your lips completely relaxed. No rounding them like you're saying run.
Which brings us to Section 5, the mouth gym and physical training.
Because knowing the rules just isn't enough, it's time for our training montage. Here are the 3 physical villains you need to defeat with daily drilling to actually build permanent muscle memory. First, the T&D. You want to use the suction cup exercise. Literally glue your tongue behind your top teeth and force air out to practice that ch pressure. Second, the throat R. Practice that dry gargle with a totally dead tongue. And third, a sneaky bonus villain, the final L. Americans always tend to raise the back of their tongue for words like Brazil, but in Rio, the tip of your tongue must firmly hit your top teeth while your lips relax into a slight oo sound.
So the crucial point here is how you practice this. You really have to use the slow-motion mirror technique. Let's do the word leite together right now. Step 1, open your mouth for the L. Step 2, press your tongue to your teeth for the I. Step 3, trap the air and forcefully push out the ch. And step 4, finish with a whispered tiny ah. Leite. Did you catch step 4? Cariocas drastically reduce their final vowels. An E at the end of a word almost always becomes a short, whispered ah, and an O becomes a tiny U. If you don't reduce those vowels, your American rhythm is still going to betray you.
And finally, Section 6, the social switch. Mastering the accent physically is really only half the battle. Knowing exactly when to deploy it is what truly makes you sound like a native. So let me ask you, when should you turn this accent off? I know that might sound totally counterintuitive after everything we just went over, but a heavy Carioca accent is actually not the right choice for every single situation in Brazil.
Let's move to the context method and see how this builds into real-world fluency. You want to turn the accent fully on when you're with friends at the bakery and informal settings or, anywhere in Rio. But you actually need to turn it off, or at least heavily soften it if you're in formal corporate business meetings in places like São Paulo, the South, or the Center West. In those environments, an aggressively heavy Carioca k, j, and hiss from a foreigner can actually sound a bit theatrical or overly informal. Adjusting your accent based on the room, that is the ultimate proof of mastery.
We are going to end this explainer with a final provocative challenge. Look at the sentence on screen. I want you to literally read this out loud right now. You need to combine the palatalized T and D, the hissed S, those crazy throat mechanics, and the reduced final vowels, all in one go. Give it a try. O que tipo de dia que a gente gosta para comer 2 biscoitos? If you can master the mechanics of that one complex sentence, you are absolutely well on your way to conquering the Carioca accent. Keep practicing those mouth mechanics, and I'll catch you in the next one.